So today, I thought it was interesting beforehand. It was being mentioned about the middle way, which is the pretty much the path that Buddha taught, the middle way. So, of course, in uh, as far as Buddha's life, he went from being wealthy and living in the palace and going to be a prince and or he was a prince, going to be a king and all of that. And then he goes out and he becomes spiritual, and then he goes on not eating, for whatever length of time, long time. So once he saw that, ruining his body by not, eating and things, he began to take some nourishment. I think he took one seed of, or one piece of rice, and he could feel the energy, right at that time. And then he realized, to not go to the extremes, basically, you know, taking the middle path. So the middle path is that way within physically, but also within the teachings themselves. The middle path is kind of learning the basically about emptiness. So I think you've all heard the word emptiness before. The Sanskrit word for emptiness is shunyata. Tibetan word is tompani. And I like to say understanding emptiness is extremely key, because it's part of, it doesn't matter whether you're practicing within the Sutrayana tradition, Mahayana tradition, Vajrayana Tantric tradition, or Dzogchen. Emptiness is always part of that. So how does that fit in, somewhat to the middle way? That's because we are always at an extreme with everything we come in contact with within our life. We're either overestimating, or we're underestimating, or we're just playing deaf and dumb and ignoring it. We're not allowing our mind to deal with things in the proper way, so we don't see things in a proper way. The things that we think are so real to us, the world that we make up, that if I collect this and this and this and this and this is the path to happiness, is an overestimation. It's not an overestimation if our mind approaches it with a reasonable attitude. The one example I always loved Lama used to give is he'd be sitting up there and somebody'd have flowers up on his thing, Lama Yeshe, and he'd say, "This flower is so beautiful. My life depends on this flower. Makes me so happy as long as this flower's alive." But you know that the flower is going to live for 8 days, 10 days, so you don't become overly attached to it, because we become in tune with reality. Reality is we're living within change, within impermanence. The world is always changing. Look at what we're going through now. It's always that way. But our mind wants to grasp that, this is the very worst thing, that could be happening, this pandemic and things. And so we push away at that. The reality is, it's just another expression going on each moment, each day. So at a certain point, we begin to develop the wisdom of emptiness. The wisdom of emptiness recognizes the one taste of all phenomena. All phenomena are of one taste. But we look to be happy, and so we overgrasp at these certain type of things. But in fact, we cannot be totally happy, because what we're grasping after is unreasonable to expect us to give us ultimate happiness. If we meet it with a reasonable mind and say, having this nice home, this nice car, I can enjoy it, but my whole life doesn't depend on that. My whole happiness doesn't depend on that, and just enjoy it and understand that it's going to come and go as well, then we begin to flow, within the energy of reality, of truth. So the extreme mind is an unhappy mind, because it's already not happy because it's grasping at something, rather than recognizing right at the given moment, any given moment, one can be happy, one can enjoy, beautiful day, beautiful food, whatever it might be. But instead, we want to grasp at something else and overestimate what it can bring back to us. When we recognize it and see it for what it is, we're awakening wisdom. We're awakening clear, I want to say awareness of wisdom, but it's not. It's more than awareness in one sense. It's a sharpness. It's a clarity. So what does that mean? That means that all phenomena, everything we come in touch with throughout the day, exists two ways. So in Buddhism, it talks about, especially within the Sutrayana path, talks about you basically have ultimate truth and temporal truth. Always. So if we take this chair is never separate from its absolute nature of emptiness. What does that mean? That means that we think that what we come in contact with is existing in a absolute solid way, and that's why we grasp after it. But if we look, where is that absolute chair? There's not an absolute chair there. There's a chair that exists. So we can't mix up and get mixed up that emptiness means totally nothingness. That's an extreme. So we go from one extreme of everything exists absolutely as we perceive it through our senses, through our eyes, through our ears, through our nose, through our touch, through our thinking, through our feelings. We think that it exists that way. Whereas if we take a look, we see that there's a chair that exists, but it doesn't exist. There's not an absolute chair there. There's many parts that make up this chair. There's people that put it together. Without putting all these pieces together, and then we put the mental label chair on it, actually it could be a table. Right now it's part of a table. We have a nice picture of His Holiness the Dalai Lama up there. It's like as a table. It doesn't have an absoluteness about it. So what is emptiness? Emptiness is empty of our false concepts of the world we come in contact with. So our mind, in its very nature, has emptiness, but it also has vivid awareness, vivid sharpness, luminosity. So because of that, we are not who we think we are. We have many personas of ourself that we hold on to. Because this is me, then I need to have this way, that way. Absolutely, it has to be that way because I have a very, very clear picture of who I am. So the egolessness means the emptiness of who we think we are. Because our absolute nature has emptiness as its base, there are no limitations. We can do anything. It's possible. If we have the know-how, we can do anything because the creativity of the mind exists because of this emptiness that is who we think we are. But instead we have these different personas. We have thousands of these. We have the main one of who we think we are mainly, but we have other ones. We have persona A, persona B. So our persona is going to act differently when it sees something it doesn't like. It's going to act a little differently when it sees something we do like. When we grasp onto the persona of ourself and believe that there's an absolute Scott existing within there, we are confused. We are taking our nature of mind, which is clear and knowing, and making it muddy. That's what becomes known in Buddhism as delusions. We've diluted our pure awareness to distort the world around us. It's like, I always like to say those, when we go to a carnival, and you go to the carnival, you see those mirrors that are warped, and you look at yourself inside that mirror, and all of a sudden, you look completely different. That's what we do all day long. All things that we perceive, they're warped. Because our awareness, which has the nature to know, is knowing wrongly. And so the path is to get back in touch with our true nature within us and understand, that all things that exist within emptiness, but they also exist. It's not that they don't exist at all, it's how they exist. So we exist as well. This feeling, that thinking of who I am, that's coming here, that's driving, that's walking, that's sitting here, that's meditating, that's here all the time, that particular I is only a stream of consciousness, of awareness. And if we try to find it within this stream of consciousness, we can't find it because we only have the moment. The past is the past. The future hasn't happened yet. We only have the now within this very, brief now, which you can't even put into the smallest, particle. We have a beginning of a thought, the end of a thought, another thought. The stream is always moving on. And within that stream, if that stream is muddied, we can't see what's at the bottom of the stream. So when we meditate to begin with awareness and calmness, and leaving us into a state of clarity, and it becomes possible, to have glimpses, experiences of our real nature, and of realizing our emptiness and our creativity, so that whatever we might do, whether we, are, helping people, or we're an artist or whatever, the creativity totally flows from the pure nature of our mind when we become in tune, with this enlightenment. So when we look at all objects and we grasp at them wrongly each time, we've put another imprint onto our mind, which creates this conceptual framework. And that's what creates karma. Karma means action. So what happens is we say sometimes we're bound by the chains of karma because of not keeping, the awareness of the real nature, and overestimating what something is or underestimating what something else is. We begin to create what our persona is. We've already programmed ourselves. We've put the program in and we're running it. So every time I come into this situation, I feel I have to react that way. I have to be upset by something happening while I'm outside. That feeling of I is a distortion, is a delusion. That's the one that's known as ignorance. In Tibetan, it's known as marikpa. So rikpa is pure awareness. Marikpa is the negative, knowing, wrongly. So it's not only not knowing, it is not knowing, it's also a fogginess in our mind, not sure about things, but it's also a much deeper knowing wrongly. And so because my mind grasps at knowing wrongly, it basically puts us into this chain where we have recycled our persona. But it's easier sometimes to first see it. So there's emptiness within ourselves, and there's emptiness of all around us, the phenomena. The outside phenomena sometimes easier, like taking this chair. But it's interesting because even scientists today, they agree with the Buddhist view of emptiness, that when they begin to look within this chair and the energy that it's made up of, and the little atoms that it's made up of, and then I don't know, what are these smallest things called now, neutrons, and I don't know, whatever else, they soon can't find them. They keep finding some smaller building blocks. So what takes place is that there's no chairness within any part of that chair. But that chair is very useful. It's useful on the conventional level. So we have conventional truth, we have absolute truth, but they don't exist separately, and one doesn't come first. And everything exists at the same time, has the two natures of absolute and conventional truth. So that's why emptiness is not nothingness, because there is conventional truth. There's no absolute truth that this temperature outside is comfortable. But when it comes from a few days ago, when we were 18 below wind chill, it feels warm. It's dependent. It's a dependent arising. If we just came back from Florida, it would feel cold because we just came dependent on, we were at 80 degrees. So Buddha taught all things being dependent arising. So dependent on how we look at it. But conventionally, we can say, yes, this is cold, but it's not the coldest I felt. So what does that mean exactly is that we project. Our mind is a projector. While we have this, while we're not coming out of pure awareness, it's continuously projecting onto the world around us. Every moment, everything we see, everything we hear, everything we touch, everything we feel, everything we think about is being projected upon. So the people we know, we project onto them, because we have an absolute view of them being, this is the way that they are. So even if there's somebody that's trying to change, and say they're usually, kind of upset, and they're trying to change that, and they, maybe not making a lot of strides, but they're trying to change that, they can't change it because the world around them won't let them. Actually, it does let them, because we don't depend on what the world around us thinks, but it reinforces it because of our projection, because we project, again, that's who they are, that's what they are. And as we know, we've done this many times with certain people that we don't like, and then for some reason, they become people that we do like. They become friends. And so we see that our projection and the way we feel toward them, and whether we want to keep them closer to us or push them away from us, is dependent on our state of mind. So bringing our mind into the middle way, into the wisdom that sees relative truth and absolute truth as it is, brings us into a better state of dealing with what takes place from moment by moment. Everything we come in contact with, which includes the feelings that we have within ourselves, around, everything is a dependent arising. But we think it is the way that it is. So when we're sitting and we feel something, we feel this pain in our back, we then begin to constrict, into these areas. The energy we send there is not open, is not relaxed. It's not sending open energy, healing energy. So we're all wound up. We're all bound up most of the time. That's why they come up with terms where they're like, oh, you're uptight, because we bring this tension up into the neck, into the shoulders areas and things. These terms are made up of something actually out of wisdom. Yeah, we're uptight because that's what we're doing. We're blocking ourselves. So this is why the energy around us, within us, the chakras become blocked, and the feelings within us. It's interesting. Lama Yeshe had a heart ailment, so he passed away at relatively young age. But so Lama, while he was in the United States, had a doctors looking at him. I think Felix has heard this before, but the doctors went to look at him and they said, okay, you need to do something. So they went to open Lama up to take a look, but he wouldn't take any type of painkillers, nothing like that. So they opened him up, did all the things. Afterwards, the doctor said, you were a quite good patient. Lama said, simply bliss. When we begin to understand suffering is bliss, samsara is nirvana, our mind begins to enter non-duality. And once we begin to have an experience of this is extremely important. That's where meditation comes in, or can be other forms of meditation, but sitting meditation, because we need to become with that experience. Intellectually, if we try to understand emptiness, we get a glimpse of it sometimes. We read something, we hear something, we're getting a little glimpse, and then it fogs over because we've redone it on our mind stream so many times to see things in the wrong way that habitual pattern needs to be broken. So the way to break into that energy of the ego grasping and of grasping for true identity outside of oneself, beyond emptiness, has been reinforced over and over. So we need to have something that's like an earthquake that breaks up this, which can become scary because it's all of a sudden like, whoa, I'm lost in space. Because space is like emptiness. Space is, we have space around us, but we begin to feel crowded. We begin to feel, suffocated. The key here is we begin to feel. We're not actually being suffocated. If Lama Yeshe was sitting there, he wouldn't be suffocated in whatever the particular situation is we think of. Only the confused mind feels suffocated. But once we feel space is the lack of substance. This substance around us, these things around us, actually on the subtlest level, if we got into Vajrayana, Tantrayana, these things are only made up of the colors on the very subtle level. That's why many times not many times, but the very high lamas, when they pass away, it's sometimes the only thing that's left. They begin to see the rainbow body, those made up of the colors, because it's went into that most subtle the most subtle energy, the physical. Sometimes all that'll be left, the lama will be sitting there, for days while it appears he's died, he's passed away. And once his mind is actually passed, then all that's left is sometimes like nails and hair. But otherwise, everything else is kind of gone, or the body becomes extremely small. I remember there's one story about the great Tibetan yogi Milarepa, who was dealing with one of his students who had kind of a messed up view upon things. And so Milarepa made his body tiny and was inside of like one of those horns that you would blow. And he said, "Look for me." And he'd look inside and he saw Milarepa inside the horn. It was a teaching, taking his body there and taking him beyond his concepts and things, in the way that he's able to control all of the elements, the inner elements within ourselves. So, of course, these great yogis are not where we're at, but it's to be known that can be for us too, because we're not who we think we are. We're empty of the wrong concepts about ourselves and about the world around us. So in coming in contact with things, there's two ways of knowing about certain things. One's through inferring it, and one's through direct. So inferring it would be like saying, okay, here's what chocolate tastes like. You've never tasted chocolate, so here's what chocolate tastes like. It's kind of sweet, and it's kind of this, and it's kind of that. And so then, you can have an idea what might be chocolate, but then when you actually taste it yourself, you have direct experience of chocolate. That's direct experience. We can infer what emptiness is by saying it's not this and it's not that. Because really, you can't say what it is, it's nothing else, it's really what it's not. It's not that, it's not that, it's not that. It's like space, it's empty of all, of all those concepts, of all those ideas. So the wisdom, the mind, when it has that experience, when we have our meditation and we have that experience, that's like a earthquake. It all of a sudden breaks up tremendous amount of karma and of confused states of mind within short period of time, within no time, because you're beyond time. You've gone beyond concept, beyond time. You've become the experience. So it's not the conceptual mind trying to understand what is the nature of our mind and what is emptiness. So the main part of the mind, the base of it is emptiness, but it's also intelligence. It's also wisdom. It's rikpa. Not ma rikpa, it's rikpa. The mind is clear in knowing. So when we meditate, if we make our mind like a mirror. Mirror has the ability to reflect objects, just like our mind has the ability to reflect objects. The mirror doesn't say, oh, that's a nice looking object, that's a bad looking object, I like that, I don't like that. It just reflects them. When our mind begins to reflect whatever it's come in contact with through any of our thoughts, feelings, senses, if we keep our mind like the mirror, we are beginning to make a big dent in confused programming that's gone on from the beginning of this life and truthfully beyond that. So we've programmed this from early age. From an early age, we've decided, oh, that's what a nice looking car looks like, and that's what one doesn't look like. And so we've built that within ourselves. We haven't seen it properly. We've overestimated it. We've went into the extreme. And we don't like that, so we've underestimated, that person has no quality whatsoever. They're the worst in the world and this and that. So we don't see things as they are. And because there's this incredible energy, so even when we get into our very subtle states in our meditation, we're almost, we're not breathing. You could, maybe somebody tried to look, they think you're dead because there's almost no breath coming. You're in such a quiet, calm space within. Even in those particular times, it's something that's completely different in the sense of the way that things are being perceived. Because the energy that's always saying, I need this, I need that, I want to get away from that, I need to get away from this, I got to get away from that. It's going on all the time while we're sitting here. There's conflict going on. And so throughout all of the 72,000 channels, not just the main channels of the central channel and the right and left channel, all the channels running throughout our body are running some kind of grasping energy. And so the winds are moving that way, and they're fighting with something in our knee, and they're fighting with something in our back, and this and that. And so because of that, we're out of balance. So maybe we need the Beatles, because the Beatles, they made the song, Let It Be. It's, let go. People say let go. Let go is very powerful. But let go in itself can be confusing, because let go means that you're doing something. So you're not really letting go. To let go means absence of doing. So when we find that quality of sitting in our meditation, absence of trying to do anything, absence of trying to get away from anything, trying to get at anything else, we have now let our mind enter open space. There's no more little reference point somewhere within us that, oh yeah, well, this is me, and yeah, I kind of don't like the way that feels. I don't like that particular sound. I like that one, this and that. That one has now gone into open space. The mind has entered open space. Because it's entered open space, anything that comes within it, there's room, there's space. This is what begins to allow us then to have an experience that when we leave from that, we can begin to see things differently. It doesn't change the fact we haven't gotten rid of our total wrong views. So we're talking about view here, having pure view rather than impure view, of seeing things properly. But there's still some subtle graspings that are always going on. So that's like when we drive on a hot day and we look down the road and we see water. Our intelligence knows that it's a mirage, so we don't veer the car off to the right or to the left and end up in a ditch because we think we're driving into a lake. We understand that it's a mirage. It's not an illusion, it's like an illusion. So we're living in a life that's like an illusion, in that we see things the wrong way and we act accordingly. When we begin to awaken, we begin to see these things, but they don't have that hold over us anymore. So we're not veering our car off, or the windshield is clean so we can see through it properly. The beauty of the example of the mirror is that the mirror is not the object, it reflects the object. And the mirror is like our mind. The mirror is not one with the dirt. We can wipe away the dirt on the mirror and have a clear reflection. Why can we wipe it away? Why can it not be there? Because the true nature of the mirror and the dirt are not one. So you can wipe it away. The true nature of who we are, of our mind, of our awareness. It's hard to say mind. Mind makes us think singularly, like there's one thing there. So our stream of consciousness. The stream of consciousness is not mixed with the delusions. They're not one with it, like the mind is not one with it. So that's a lot of stuff for today. I think if you want to talk any questions or anything, then we'll do that. Otherwise, we can end. So, anything?
I didn't expect you finished so quick. I was in it so much.
Yeah, I was just thinking that I threw out a lot of different things out there. So a lot of stuff to be talking about, and so I don't want to crowd your mind, because these are a lot of ideas, a lot of concepts. These are based on what's thought to be right concepts. But saying that, it's a lot there. So, of course, when you sit and when you meditate and things as well, you'll be able to, try to reflect on it. Put your mind like the ocean. Put your mind like the space. Think of yourself like the mirror and things, and so you can learn. When you're moving around, when we're outside, when our mind's in the wrong state of mind, even what most people conventionally are going to say is a beautiful day, you don't see a beautiful day. You see darkness.
Mm.
So that's why the Buddhist approach it's internal, it's inner. It's not changing the external, it's changing the internal. We can't change the external. The external, we can only purify our perceptions of the external, but we can't change the external.
But if you see the suffering, then like sometimes I grasp that suffering and I want to do something like very much, and it's cost me suffering. So then
You mean helping somebody? You see somebody suffering?
Yes.
Yeah. No, there's not. So this is not saying suffering is a conventional truth. It has a reality to it. It's relative reality. So if somebody is doing something to make somebody suffer, or somebody is suffering, and there's a way to ease that suffering, that's perfect.
But you mean suffering as reality is from the point like everybody dies and like all of this, it's a concept of truth, like suffering?
It's a truth. It's basically the suffering. So suffering is when we begin, when the mind is out of balance. So basically, when we see somebody else that's suffering because it's either a physical suffering or a mental suffering because they don't understand reality, because they've never learned anything, it could be any reason, or they've been impoverished and they have no money, nothing like this, they're in a relative situation that within their, you're seeing clearly somebody is in a painful situation. And out of a pure mind, if you're able to help them from that suffering, from that pain and suffering, if you can help ease it even a small amount, somebody is very hungry and you give them a little food or some money, then it helps.
Not from the point of grasping.
Not from grasping, yeah. It's not from you don't have to. Well, if so basically the knowing mind, when it knows properly, it'll do things in the right way. So in a sense of when the knowing mind is not knowing and is knowing wrongly, and so says, I'm going to help this person because all these other people are going to think I'm a great person.
Why are you doing? Reason.
that's the reason you're doing it. If your mind is pure, you're doing it because you'd like to help somebody and you have the wisdom to how to help them. We might think we're helping, like a lot of beggars, you end up giving money, and I don't know, are we helping, or are they going and buying another bottle and buying drugs? I don't know. I mean, you need wisdom together with compassion, with love. So love and compassion is an expression of our mind when our mind is seeing things properly. Okay, we've now went beyond boundaries of I and me. So I'm not self-grasping. So by not self-grasping, that means everything else around me, all other beings around me that I come in contact with, they also are the same as I don't want pain and suffering. I can feel it like it's me because I'm not separating myself from me. They're part of, you understand, you're part of one world. The world, I mean, who in a family, can you really be happy? Let's say everything is going well for you, but something is going wrong with one of your children. They're having a hard time over something. It's difficult to be happy during that time because you have love and compassion, for the child. When we get into the Buddhist idea of bodhicitta, the awakened mind, it's now gone beyond me and mine, but to the entire everything. Okay, so yeah, but wanting to help, that's the right thought.
Well, yes, but I see an experience that when I start to help and I can pick up some stuff and become the part of suffering, which is expansive of suffering. So when I
That's the part, the wisdom, yeah.
try to do from the empty space, from the what I call divine thing.
Yeah.
So then transforming with mantras or prayers later,
Yeah.
allowing the space to do the thing, then is more safe.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, basically, it's why why Buddhists do the prayer before and dedicate after, to help all living beings, is because you have to get to this. One of the wishes is I want to become enlightened, not just for myself, which would be nirvana, but for all beings to be able, like Lama Yeshe. Lama Yeshe's main prayer in his previous life, or even in this life, was also to be born where the most difficult to understand.
Again, please repeat.
He wanted to be reborn, wanted to be in the situation where it's the most difficult situation for people to understand truth, to understand reality.
Oh, this is.
So we laughed and said, us as Westerners, that was it, Yeah, we were the most, the dumbest, really, and the most confused. So, so you have the, when you look to see somebody and you say you'd like to help them, but if you haven't studied your chiropractor or you went to doctor school, you might make things worse for them if you don't know what you're doing, right?
Yeah, I understand.
Conventional, that's right. So in the practice of helping along, others as well, is that we need to realize our nature within ourselves so that we can know the best way to be helping, because our mind has the ability to know things. So you basically want to, if you don't know how to help somebody and you try to help them, you might make it worse. You can still have compassion for them, but you might make it worse. When you can help somebody, then you can try, but you can't be attached to the result. If you say, oh, look, this is going to get you to here, it's that saying, you could take a horse to water, but you can't make them drink. If you say, oh, look, if you read this book is going to completely change your life. But if they don't want to read the book, they're not going to read the book.
Yeah, that's nice.
Yeah, and if you give them the book, it might make it worse, because they might say, now for the rest of my life, I'll never look at a book like this. So
you're naturally born with the ability, you have the ability of compassion and wisdom. Wisdom is before even thought. So you know what to do. And that's what the training is to get you in a point so that your mind is settled, so that then you respond in accordance to the conditions.
So you just don't need to think, you just need to do.
You just need to be here.
Yeah.
Well,
exactly.
now thinking is not the problem. It's not the matter of thinking or not thinking in a sense. It's thinking, clearly. So.
Yes, but you have to recognize which is like.
Yeah. Since we were children, we've been taught. I don't know about you, in your
Yeah,
country,
okay.
but it's like you always have to be doing something, right? You got to be thinking. So then we drive ourselves crazy, like, oh, I'm just sitting here doing nothing. I got to be thinking about doing something. And no, it's perfectly fine just to sit still if there's nothing to do. Just to sit still and just be present and breathe. And then you'll know naturally what needs to get done because you'll feel that pull. Okay, I need to do this.
Yeah, if you are not distracted by your minds, right?
Exactly. Chasing thoughts. That's
Yes,
that's the problem.
yes.
Chasing thoughts.
Yeah, that's basically what the practices are for. Yeah. Okay. Well,